As we move forward, we're moving to Japan, really in the pre-modern period. The first shogun will be appointed in 1185, and he has power to rule on the emperor's behalf. In this arrangement, the local lords had power over the samurai and paid homage to the shogun, sort of a form of the feudal system, at least the military arrangements of the feudal system. Now, after the Kamakura collapse, there's again a civil war, and this only ends when one general comes to prominence and is named shogun. And during the Muromachi period, Zen Buddhism will come to absolute prominence alongside two other forms of Buddhism known as Pure Land Buddhism and Esoteric Buddhism. Now, Zen focused on rigorous discipline and self-responsibility. This, of course, attracts the samurai, who believed that behavioral codes focusing on loyalty, courage, and self-control were particularly important. Zen also focused on superior knowledge and refinement. That refinement part will be key to the tea ceremony, which we'll look at shortly, thereby legitimizing and elevating the status of the warrior elite. And because they focus on superior knowledge as well, they become centers of these Zen temples, become centers of secular learning. Much like the church will be a key element to medieval to almost modern education, where schools are frequently attached for much of that history to the church. Zen temples take on much the same role, this center of learning within the community. And one of these temples is going to be a Pure Land temple that will turn to Zen. However, the Zen will not alter the temple. The two traditions actually complement each other. Pure Land Buddhism provides salvation, while Zen promotes study, meditation, and existence in the present. So, Pure Land is sort of this idea of salvation attached to Buddhism. And what we're actually looking at here is the Dry Cascade and Pools. Now, the lower gardens featured a pond in the form of the character from mind or spirit. And then what they do is they look at this area and they actually move all of these stones. And this is all landscaping, even though it looks completely natural. The almost iridescent moss contrasts with the rocks and the sand on the hill above. And we tend to think of landscaping as putting in a lawn or a berm or some trees and bushes. In Japan at the time, they're trying to alter it to make it more perfect, but they want it to still remain natural. They want that organic sense to it, because without that, we lose the fact that we're in the outdoors, at least in their sensibility at the time. Now, the Dry Cascade and Pools are a treasured early example of dry landscape gardening. And looking at this dramatic scene was thought to be beneficial to the human spirit. It's sort of like if you have a place, some people have a place outdoors where they go and it just feels good, it feels right. You sit there, you look out on the scene. It's where you go to think of life's problems or any number of other things. It's the same basic principle. Now, this form becomes increasingly popular at Zen temples, this sort of alteration of nature and this idea of creating a space that will purify, that will be beneficial to the human spirit. And over time, what starts as this very natural form of landscaping develops into the artificial collection of rocks and white sand that we see commonly today. And we can see those parallels. Yes, instead of a pool or just sand and moss in the middle, we're replacing that with white sand. But even here, Even though we know logically that this whole thing must be landscaped, that nature does not work this way, it looks very natural. And so it draws out that Japanese interest in nature and the spirits of nature, the kami, that they hold over from Shinto, and it draws all that out in this purely Japanese form of Buddhism. Here's another example, a little more minimalistic example. And to them, even raking these stones, creating those lines, will be part of the meditative process.